Yes.
So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this masterclass on developing an investor pitch. We are organizing this exclusively for applicants of the TiE Women Program, which, as you would all know, is a global pitch competition. So, hence, it is limited to a few applicants who have registered for the program. Incidentally, we also have a few people from TiE Coimbatore who have joined. Welcome to this masterclass. So one of the prerequisites of any investor discussion is primarily, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. So one of the prerequisites of any investor interaction is a pitch deck. And it's primarily covers aspects such as details about your company, the products that you are planning to pitch, financials, team composition, and projections, of course. And in most investor discussion, the pitching is usually limited to a very small duration, around 10 to 15 minutes. We call it an elevator pitch primarily because the pitching has to happen between your travel from a particular floor to another in an elevator. So it's called an elevator pitch. So it is very critical primarily to keep your pitch deck precise and covering just the important aspects. So in this context, we thought we'll ideally do a masterclass on how we can develop a pitch deck. So today we have with us Seshadri Krishnan. Seshadri is a faculty for this particular session. He's a registered valuer and a venture partner at our venture. He's also involved with the Indian Angel Network as a partner earlier. And I, in particular, know him for quite some time because we've been colleagues in Ernst & Young earlier. He's got almost 20 years of career in Asia as well as the US, covering consulting aspects such as strategy, valuation, corporate finance, financial planning, and analysis. And basically, he's also a registered valuer, so he's been doing valuation for many companies. He now provides consulting services under investment and planning advisory to individuals as well as for valuation companies. So without further ado, I request Seshadri to take it over and start the masterclass. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nirmal, for the kind introduction. Am I coming through clearly? I still have a problem with my Zoom, so just checking.
We can hear you, sir.
So the today's presentation essentially is structured around how to pitch to investors, and the way I have tailored it is heavily inspired by a lot of presentations I have seen across probably last 3-4 years from startups working with Kerala Startup Mission or TiE or even our ventures. And essentially I've been sitting through a lot of pitch sessions where startups come and talk about what their business idea is, essentially in those sessions. And these what I would say is today's session is primarily based on what I have seen a lot of startups do wrong, as well as very some of the things that startups have done right in their presentation. So let's start with the first and sort of broad rule for these presentations or the investor pitches. What is called as the 10-20-30 rule. The idea comes from Silicon Valley, where given about 30 minutes to present an idea, and that's essentially the attention span for the investors, is how a lot of people like to put it. And the 10-20-30 rule comes from the point where it says that your presentation has to be limited to 10 slides, and it has to be tailored to a 20-minute presentation, essentially leaving 10 minutes for Q&A. and it has to be done in a 30 points font size. So whatever font you use, essentially you are going to use a 30 size in that. So what the 30 point rule does is it avoids very cluttered presentation. So you can't have a lot of text in the 30 point slide presentation.
Excuse
And
me, Nirmal, can you please mute everyone? There is a lot of background noise.
Yeah. So I think that's Seshadri's children, I guess.
yeah, you're probably hearing the children playing outside,
Yeah.
actually.
Then it's okay. I thought it's one of us. Yeah. Okay.
So coming back to the today's presentation, it's all structured along those lines. You will see the same pattern repeating here, except that I am violating a lot of things that I'm going to talk to you about today, because today's presentation is not really about a startup or an idea which can follow this particular format that is under discussion, but uh, essentially these are more guidelines for how to pitch your idea. So the first guideline, like I said, was talking about the 10, 20, 30 rule. And uh, the we'll, like we said, it's all about following a 10 slide and 20-minute presentation and a 30 point uh, font size. And here, with all the pitches, you have to keep one key thing in mind, that is your objective is to get the attention of the right investor, and not really to sell the idea to everyone in the audience. What I mean by that is, usually entrepreneurs are passionate about their idea, their business, and they've spent so much time, they've invested so much time thinking about their idea that they want everyone to be convinced about it. And I've seen arguments break out in pitch sessions during Q&A sessions, which essentially will put off your other investors that might be interested from the presentation. So here you have to essentially look at it as a way to get the attention. You can always discuss the finer points, the logic of your idea, etc., to in a much more deep dive sessions with the particular investor. And like I said, the 10, 20, 30 rule, 10 slides, 20-minute presentation, and a 30 size font. And like I said, the 30 size font limits you from not cluttering the slides. And rehearse your presentation, and rehearse it multiple times. But at the same time, uh, if you can follow us, structure a presentation in the form of a story, that gets much better attention than a lot of facts. So if you think about your own experience, where you where somebody has your attention span for more than 30 minutes, or say more than 10 minutes, it would have been more likely to be in the form of a story or a narrative, right? So if you structure your presentation in that form, it will be actually great way to pitch. A lot of presentations don't follow, or don't essentially bend to become a story. So this is something you have to think about in terms of your own particular idea that you're pitching, and present the idea with passion. So coming back to the point about rehearsing, once you rehearse something about 2 or 3 times or even 4 times, you lose the passion that comes across. It comes across as a rote memorization that you're spewing back to the audience. So present the idea with passion, but at the same time be less emotional in content. So what I mean by that is, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs try to appeal only to the emotional side of an investor, where saying that if they invest, they will save a lot of lives, etc., which may or may not be true in a lot of cases. So uh, you know the content needs to be more fact oriented, and your presentation needs to be more, the way you deliver that presentation or the content needs to be more passionate. So that's the broad guideline I would give you about the presentation to start off. Now let's look at what are the 10 slides that I'm talking about in the 10, 20, 30 rule. And this is heavily inspired and borrowed from The Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. And so let's get to the first slide. So this is your elevator pitch. So classic elevator pitch is the definition of that is you get into an elevator with an investor or somebody and you are going to introduce yourself and your business and what the business does and what problem you're trying to solve. So that should be your first slide. A lot of people like to keep their contact information, etc., in the first slide in this elevator pitch, which is also fine, as long as you keep it in a much smaller font size so that you don't take the attention away from your main thing about the elevator pitch. The idea about the short introduction is that it has to be keep it very short, so 3 keywords or phrases, and ideally not more than 2 sentences. You can have a logo or an image that describes your idea or your business logo. So that's your first slide right there. And the second slide essentially is the problem or opportunity. So here you describe the pain you are alleviating. Here you will say who has that pain and what that particular pain that you're trying to minimize would be. And or the second case would be that what pleasure you are providing and why will someone need that particular solution or the pleasure that you're offering. So most startups will fall within these two broad parameter. Either you're trying to solve a pain for a customer or you're trying to add on something to a customer. And now the real question that you need to also address is what is your, or how many people have this particular pain, or how many will be attracted to your product or the pleasure that your product provides. And the key and the most important thing is how do you know that so many people are willing to accept that solution, so or willing to or essentially have that particular pain point. So these are the 2 or 3 points that need to be in the problem or opportunity slide. And one of the mistakes I've seen a lot of startups make is they'll talk about every problem or every pain that a customer has in that particular sector or industry or area that they are in and describe all of that there. That is not necessary, and that will make your further slides more complicated. So here stick to 1 or maximum 2 of it, and just leave the rest of it as sort of incidental benefits or something that you want to highlight as some of the additional benefits that the customer or the user will get from your product or service. So the long and short of this is describe the problem or opportunity in and limit it to 2 points and 2 cases essentially. Now moving on. Now that you've described the pain or the pleasure, you start talking about what your value proposition is. So how do you plan to make your customer happy with whatever your product is? So this is your slide number 3. And here you will also say, why is it better or different than others? So it could be that there is no solution that addresses the kind of pain point that a customer has, or your solution is much better or different than what is in the market. Here, it's also a good idea to talk about in the spirit of talking about stories rather than presenting facts. You can also talk about the case of one customer that you want to highlight. And this is an area where you can if you are inclined, you can bring in the customer's emotion, or how they felt after using your product, etc., in very short single slide and in pictures. So essentially, you customers before they use your product or service, and this is what happened to them afterwards, and this is what their reaction was afterwards. So that's your short customer case study that you present. And again, keep it very short. Like I said, your 30 point uh, font size is going to limit everything here. Now moving on to the next slide, it will be about the underlying magic within your product or solution. So here you will describe your proprietary technology, any secret sauce you have, and it could be the magic. So you are bringing together, say, multiple things into that particular product or platform or service, and that creates a certain magic which solves the problem for customer. And here, one of the key things to remember is, especially when it comes to tech products, science oriented products, or people with scientific background, they tend to use a lot of text to describe, a lot of technical words to describe the solution that they're offering. None of that is needed. What is actually would be more appropriate would be show pictorially how your problem gets solved, or how your product works. Even better, show demos or prototype to a live audience, if that is possible. And uh, you know taking a lesson from today's session itself, if you are planning to do a presentation or through Zoom or one of these medias, through a video conference, it's better to have a recorded video than trying to do a live demo. uh, Only because a lot of technology failures can happen, if there are bandwidth issues for your, even your investor, or from your side, you can always share the video that the customer can look at in on their screen without taking up much bandwidth. So uh, incidentally, today's beginning also became a good demo for this case, that I just wanted to highlight here. Now moving on, now you start, now that you've talked about the problem that your customer is facing, how you are solving it, and what value you offer, and what is the magic behind it. Now is the time to show which sector or which segment of your customer has the money. So essentially here, you'll talk about your business model, where you'll say who has the money that you want and how you're going to get that into your pockets. So here, essentially what you're going to say that is, let's say you have 1,000 customers, and only 500 of them have the money to spend. You're going to say that you will target those 500, and what makes them buy your product or service. So here it can be your segment definition essentially can be based on someone else report. So look at some, if you're a tech-based product, look at Gartner's or published market surveys, published research. Uh, and this is where you talk about top-down, where you say that there is a large market out there. It has been identified in this particular survey, or this pain point has been identified in the survey that was done by this reputed organization. And then you will come down to how your product is fitting into that sort of problem. So that is one approach. The second approach is a bottom approach, where you're saying that you have so many users based on your trial, or the market validation that you've done so far. And here you have to heavily talk about why the user is buying it. So you will have to have done your own survey, and the number of buys they'll make in a particular time period, let's say 1 year, and what would be the order value. So this essentially gives an idea of what your product market is worth to the customers, and the here you are essentially cueing the investor to think about how large this company can grow. So this is just the setting up for that thought process. And you may have multiple business or revenue sources in your business model. So it could be coming from advertising, it could be coming from user subscription, it could be coming from subsidies, it could be any number of things. But highlight your top 1 to 3 revenue sources, not more than that. And you also have to talk about how you prioritize your customers, your segment. Essentially talk about whether you use the size of the customers segment, or whether how fast they're going to grow, or the potential of the customer base growing. So essentially you start with a limited number of customers, and probably the market is going to grow by itself. So that could be your 3 cases for how you prioritize. And you have to offer proof. So this is the part of the presentation where I tell you that your pitch has to be more about showing your investor, prospective investor, how your product is working in the market, or how you can work in the market and solving. So rather than you telling the investor that my product is great and it is working, here you are going to offer proof based on your current customer activity or customer behavior, how many are using it, why they are buying your product, what and take it back to the previous slide where you talked about before and after customer experience, before using a product and after using a customer product. So tie that back to that particular slide. So here you have to offer that proof that it is working in the market. Market is ready to accept your product in a much bigger way. And that's your business slide model. Again, less cluttered, it is better. And now you come to the your go-to market plan. So how do you plan to reach your customer? Here you'll talk about your advertisements, what channels you will use, how do you plan to market, again, why you are using one form of market over the other, and finally, how much does it cost you? So you'll talk about why you picked a certain particular channel, why you did not pick, and the broad guideline here is you have to think in terms of volume, cost, and conversion. So essentially, what I mean by that is the volume of customers you get by using a certain technique or using a certain channel, and the cost of doing that, and how much of your segment you're converting to customers by following that particular plan. So these are the 3 things you need to think about when you start talking about the go-to-market plan. So moving on to the sort of final slide on the market part of it, and we'll probably take a little break for some Q&A here. So here you have to talk about your competition. So one of the key mistakes that I've seen a lot of, especially tech startups make, is that they'll say that we don't have any real competition, and they'll keep the slide blank. But the investor, what they're looking for is to see whether you have thought through about your customer segment. If the customer did not have your product, what will they do? Will they accept other products which are very similar to your products, which may not clearly be in your segment, but which may be somewhat similar, that solves your customer's problem a different way. So you clearly have to think through this competition, keeping that in mind. So the worst answer you can give in this slide is that I don't have any competition. And one of the better answers would be that I have competition, but I am better in a feature by feature comparison. So this is a very common way of putting it across. So people will talk about uh, things like I have features X, Y, and Z, and these will be typically the features that you offer, and you will compare your competition against it by saying that my competition A has this feature X, but they don't have Y, and they are delivering Z in a very poor fashion. And they'll then talk about competitor B and C and on so forth. But the idea is to highlight how you are doing it better or more efficient. And here the guideline is more competition you talk about, it is better because that gives an idea that you have thought your customer through and their customer behavior through completely. You've done a very deep study here. And here you will also list only the top ones, but you can still keep additional slides on how some of the other customers or sorry, other competition will fare in the particular market. So if you can't do a feature by feature comparison, like I just discussed, the other way of doing it is a 2-axis graph. So just take 2 features from your product, put it on a graph, and uh, you know outline how you compare against all of your competition. Of course, you want to be on the right and top side with your offering, while you want to show your competition on the other sides of that particular 2-axis graph. So where you'll say that feature 1 from low to high and feature 2 on the x-axis from low to high, and then you'll do a comparison. So I think this would be a good time to stop for Q&A on this discussion, and open for some questions. We'll go into other slides little after any questions on whatever we discussed so far.
So if you have any questions, if you can raise your hands. Yeah, go ahead, Sridhar.
Yeah, I have a question here. Mr. Seshadri, like the go-to-market slide which you had, na? Can you please,
Right.
get to that? The go-to-market is one area which I've always had a concept understanding issue, I think. So what do you actually mean, like the go-to-market?
So here all you're going to do is talk about you have identified a say customer pool,
Okay.
right, or customer segment,
Right.
and here you're going to talk about how you plan to reach that customer with your product. So how does the customer come to know that you have this great product or service that you're offering? So it could be that you're going to use social media marketing, or here you will talk about why you'll do television ads,
Okay.
or
Or any media for that matter.
any media or any way of marketing. So uh, this typically falls into 2 broad spectrums when you talk about startups. One is where you are trying to address the enterprise market. So enterprise market meaning large companies. So here your go-to market will always be based on sales reps or customer relation managers or things like
Right.
that. But if your approach is towards the other side, where it's a mass market or a small segment within a mass market, there your approach will be more towards using social media or similar kind of things. So ideally, the sort of Silicon Valley wisdom is that your product has to fall within these 2 extremes. Otherwise, it doesn't succeed. But it doesn't apply to all the once you come out of the valley, it doesn't apply to the other investors or their pitches or similar discussions.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think Rupali has a hand up. Rupali, go ahead.
Rupali is mute.
Yes. Good evening. I had a doubt about the tone of the deck, because I've seen some people, write in a very flamboyant way, almost saying, we will be the world's best and or the only something, or the most revolutionary app, or
Right. Right.
or using superlatives, and they haven't yet got their first customer, and
Right.
but somehow it seems to be appreciated by some, but I find it a bit, confusing, and not sure whether we should be using it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I put it in one of the later slides at the end. Superlatives should be out of your presentation. So as long as you can keep the most, best, etc. out of your presentation, better it is. I mean, like I was talking about it earlier, it's better to show rather than tell. So the superlatives will fall within the tell category rather than the show category. So I mean, what I as an investor usually take away from that is, somebody trying to overcompensate for a lack of confidence, or something like that in the product.
Yes.
And so it's also part of wrong coaching sometimes. So they might have had it, gotten some kind of wrong advice on this, but still discounting for that, my first conclusion would be that they're trying to overcompensate for something there. So, and once they do this, I'll also look for the competition slide. So that's where I usually find inevitably 90 out of 100 times the case where they'll say that I don't have any competition in the world. So as an investor, immediately, I'm not interested in the further slides, because that is typical overconfidence that shows up.
Yes. Yes.
So you can use this particular superlative in one first slide where you're doing the elevator pitch, but after that it should not show anywhere else. So you can say that we want to offer the best or the most efficient solution to this particular say food delivery, and then in the later slides you will be talking about how you're going to do that. So that is the show part again. And so the first elevator, you will tell what you're going to do, and then in the next slides you're going to show how you're going to do it. Right? So that's an excellent point you raised about that. And for some reason I either missed it in the first part, or I have it in the last slide.
So as a corollary to that as well, to the competition thing. Now, if you have a digital product, almost everything is a competition, an indirect competition, right? So where does one start and where does one stop? Because if you have a digital product, Netflix is also competition as is Candy Crush. Doesn't matter what you're doing, because you're all fighting for the same attention, doesn't matter if it's a B2B or a B2C product, doesn't matter, what you're selling or making. Eventually if you're on the digital space, so where does that competition start and end for that slide?
Yeah, so in the competition slide, in that particular single slide, you have to obviously limit it within what is near your space. So let's say you're offering a video platform or an OTT platform. Clearly, Netflix has to be there, Amazon Prime has to be there. But if you're offering any other digital product where, say, Netflix doesn't have a presence, it's better if you keep it aside, but do your analysis. What I mean by that is, so when I say that you have to limit everything within that 10 slide, nothing stops you from having additional slides. So the most prepared startup pitches that I've seen always will have additional slides, and they will bring that up whenever a question comes up in the Q&A side, and they'll show that. So they'll show that, yeah, let's say somebody asks, couldn't Netflix come into your area and do X? So they'll already have that answer in the slide, in the additional slide section. So some keep it in the single presentation, and that's usually the best practice, to keep the 10 slides in that presentation, because sometimes you may have to share it to the where somebody else might be presenting from a different device, or if it is a let's say in my case, Nirmal could be presenting the slide, so I don't want to send the entire, say, 100 slide presentation to him and he struggles with it. So keep the 10 slides separate, and keep your answer preparation slides separate, and you can always pull it up and show that when that question comes up. And the other thing also it does that is, you can always scroll through fast your secondary slides without disrupting the entire flow of the other presentation. So you can still have the main presentation going in the the main presentation area while you're looking through the correct slide that you want to show. And then when you have it, you can always switch the presentations, right? So all of this is just a matter of the that particular situation that you're facing. And like I said, show your nearest competition, but at the same time, you don't want to ignore something. So one of the cases that I usually discuss, and this is during my enterprise days, where we were discussing about Geo that was coming into the market at that time. And some of the new players, foreign players, had just entered the market, like Vodafone investing in India after Geo or Reliance had announced their plans to get back into telecom. So we were discussing that within our telecom group, and one of the comments I was making is that you always should have this eye on the horizon, where there could be one new player that could be coming in to disrupt your market entirely, right? So this the Netflix point that you raised would be something that you keep in that kind of backup slide, where you say that I've thought about, say, Netflix coming into the market, or Reliance coming into the telecom market and offering a cheap product and acquiring all my customers, or going into a lower segment, and thereby killing my growth potential. So all of that could be your secondary slide.
Great, sir. Thank you.
I think Drishya has a question. Ma'am, if you can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah. So my question was, is it advisable to keep our business model canvas in the slide that mentioned business model?
So I didn't get into that business model canvas, but because the session is really not about business model. But since you brought it up, I'll take this opportunity to just speak a little bit about business model canvas, and why that is essential before you come in to start preparing the pitch slide. So usually the sequence of getting into the pitch slide that I offer to any customer or anyone advises, first start with your large business plan. So that is where business model canvas comes into play. And this is for people who don't know about this tool that puts your business into 9 boxes. It helps you analyze your business into 9 different boxes, helps it analyze better, and then come up with a business plan from it. You can essentially, one thing it does for me at least is that it makes sure that I don't miss out any particular area that is critical in that model analysis that I'm doing, in that business plan I'm doing. So that the final outcome is usually a single slide that is called as a business model canvas with all the 9 boxes laid out. But in a pitch presentation, I never use that business model canvas slide, because what it does is the 10 slides that you're presenting is anyway those 9 boxes in one way or the other. So it takes away that suspense from the investor. So once somebody has seen the business model canvas, rest of it is just you describing the different 9 boxes in that business model canvas. So
yeah, I understood.
Yeah.
So it's not advisable to keep it towards the starting, is it?
Starting, and again, this is something you can have in your secondary slide. So so when it comes to a discussion, you can always show that, and this is a good way of bringing your presentation together as in a sort of summary form. So probably one of the clever ways of doing this is leave this business model canvas as your slide when the discussions or Q&A is going on. So that's another clever way of doing, but at the end of the presentation, never the beginning.
Understood. Just one more question.
Sure.
So we mentioned about value proposition as well as elevator pitch. So I would like to know the difference, because I thought it's the same.
Yeah, so value proposition by itself is can be much longer. Elevator pitch is like a 30-second pitch, right? So here you'll talk about who you are, what your business is, and what problem you're solving, or essentially what your solution is. So it doesn't get into why the customer values it or what your solution offers in a little bit more detail. So the value proposition essentially is more descriptive than your the 2-line that I was talking about earlier in your elevator pitch, or the 2 phrases that I was talking about in the elevator pitch.
Okay, thank you.
Before we go on to the next question, there's one on the chat from Ashwadi. She asks, what do we actually project in a pitch deck? Do we show the future scope of the idea or product, or do we talk about the current situation that we are in?
In all the slides that we just covered, it's all about future, and there will be a slide where you talk about what the current state is. And here, if you also see, we haven't actually gotten into much detail about your product, what your product development plan is, timeline is, etc. So that's all left for one of the sort of end slides. And part of the reason is in the initial slides, you're trying to get the investor excited about the market and the potential of your product rather than your current state. So you may have sold, say, there are 10 parts to your problem, and you may have sold the first 2, which may be the major ones, but you still need, probably you're raising funds to add features to solve the next 8 of them. So in that case, there is no point talking about the 2 that you have and the 8 that you don't have, right? Or it could be a case that you have solved the problem for 10 customers, and you're raising the money to reach to the 1,000 customers, right? So you may have sold it for 10 of them, but you really haven't tapped the larger market. So all this first, say 5-6 slides is all about getting your investor excited about the market and the way you are addressing the market, or the solution that you're offering, how that can scale, or how that can really grow big in that particular marketplace. So the short version of it is that keep the first few slides discussing about what can be done when you have all the money in the world. Right?
Thank you. Next question is from Jatos.
Hi, hi, sir. At what stage it is best to present the marketing technique I am newly implementing? In which slide we can put it?
So the marketing technique goes into the go-to-market slide. But if you are just in the sort of test phase of a particular marketing technique, let's say you've been doing social media marketing all this while, but you have switched to another channel, or you're just testing another channel through certain, using certain, or you're experimenting with it, let's say. So the way to present that is, one, if you're raising money for use in that secondary channel, you should talk about how you are going to grow that the second channel. And at the same time, you should also address the point that your first channel is clearly working, and that the customers coming through that first channel will be your sort of stable base that the investor can count on, and the second channel will be what addresses the growth. So this could be one of the cases. So the second case is you have you have addressed a particular segment. Let's say you were B2C before, where you were using a lot of social media and getting customers coming to your website, look at your trial your product, etc. And suddenly you decide to become a B2B because there is a larger opportunity there. Here you have to start giving more focus on, like I said, why you think that B2B market is huge, and why you think your product also is a fit for that B2B market, because the B2C market is working, right? It clearly in your case. So you have to also say why you're pivoting towards that B2B market. And that's a very difficult case to make all the time, regardless of which industry or sector you are in. I recently had a startup, a Kerala-based startup, which is in the financial service industry, where they were targeting B2C and suddenly they want to go B2B. And their potential is great, but that changes a lot of things about how they, the business model that we talked about would be different for these two customers. If you keep doing it for both the B2C and B2B market, and your revenue model will be again different. So all of this you have to factor in. So that is one layer of complexity that you're bringing in wherever you sort of fork any of these. So whether you fork your solution, whether you fork your go-to-market strategy, or any of these, your presentation becomes complex. So that is something you have to always keep in mind. So your focus should be on, again, why you are approaching this particular investor or this particular investor group, whether to raise money to fund your existing offering or existing way of doing things, or to whether they're putting money into the new way of doing things. So that will decide where you put your focus on. I hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Seshadri. This is Revati Krishna. I want to ask a question on behalf of all the applicants. Whenever we talk about investors, they say that the owner or the startup, the founder, and his or her background is very critical to investing in a company. And most of our applicants are early stage startups, which means less than 3 years. So how do they get that story across? And because they are still new, or rather new into the market, probably the emotions and the stories are more than hard cold facts. So how do they tailor their pitch presentation, the first few slides, to get that across, that passion across, and the personal story, their experience across? Thank you.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because early stage startups are unique in this respect. Right? So see, first here, even though you have 10 slides, the focus can be clearly on say 6 or 7 of them rather than all of them. So here what you do is in an early stage startup, the story will usually revolve around how you came across the problem. So one of the startups that are raising their first round of funds right now, their problem came from an experience that their founder had, where his old age parents are based here and in Kerala, and he's somewhere else. And he found it difficult to arrange for certain services. Say, you know, not to get into his business, I'll just use another example. He found it difficult to, let's say, get plumbers. Right? And then the question, even if you get a plumber to work on to solve, there are all the associated problems that you can think of. They don't show up on time, the quality of work, they don't know how to deal with say somebody past 70 or 80 who are not really able to help them or hand over tools or whatever, buy their product, replacement, etc. for them. So all of this becomes a problem, right? That this particular founder had faced. So that becomes the part of your problem statement. So that is where you grab the attention through this emotional story. So once that once that hook is there, rest of it will flow from there. So it doesn't matter whether you don't have your go to market in place, whether you don't have your team in place. All of that doesn't matter, because the problem becomes much larger than the solution or the state of your venture that you're currently in. So that is one way of doing this. So you can grab that grab the attention and interest with that particular point, or it can be through the uniqueness of your solution. So it can be that the problem might be something common, right? But the common problem might have a very unique solution that you're offering. So that could be the second way of doing an early stage venture kind of presentation. And there is a third way of doing it, but that rarely applies in a situation here, but I'll still talk about it. It could be a technology solution that you're offering, right? So your team might be strong. So just to take one of the startups or teams that I know very closely, who's here, Dr. Priya, and their product. It's a very technology based, science based, not the tech, the old kind of technology, science and technology kind of technology based solution that they offer, with a patent and a lot of research going into it and all of that. So that unique solution could be your hook for the investor. So this is how you usually talk about an early stage, because you cannot clearly talk about customer, because that's all in the air, right? Because you don't the rubber really hasn't met the road, so to speak. So you can't really talk about it without sounding very pretentious or anything like that. So that is ruled out. You cannot talk about numbers. You cannot talk about the money you are going to make clearly because of all those reasons. So the three things that you can talk about is either the problem, the uniqueness of your solution, and or the uniqueness of your team. And there is one other hook for the investor, but we'll talk about that in the sort of final slide, where I'll show you how to address some of how to really tailor it to an investor. So that actually addresses to the entire flow of your presentations.
Just one more question. That is, does the presentation, does the language matter, or anything like that, or a tone?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that, because I was just thinking about one thing. See, one is presentation that you have upon the board should be error-free. So it has to be checked for all typos, grammatical mistakes, etc. But it doesn't have to be a perfect convent English in your delivery or anything like that. Some of the best pitches that I've heard are either in Hindi or Malayalam, uh, and uh, and even the Hindi ones, it doesn't translate sometimes well, but the language might be difficult. But somebody who's really interested in your product, etc. So that is the language part of it. But the other point I want to also talk about is it also comes back to the point where I was saying, talking about rehearsing your presentation, etc. The I also want to make this distinction about the tone, right? You're not making a corporate presentation, so you don't have to be purely business-like. So depending on the kind of offering that you're providing, you don't really have to be business-like. So you can be very casual about it. So let's say somebody's offering a travel solution. You don't have to really be, wear a coat, suit, etc., and present it. If it's some solution you're offering to a camper. So, or if you're talking about something very fun, or something that you're offering to school age students or nursery students, you can follow the same theme in your presentations as well. So that is one segment of it. Second is you can do it in your own unique style. So as you can see from my way of doing it, it's not like a business pitch or a presentation. I'm just doing a conversational way of doing this presentation, right? And the slides are just to help me present it. And this is my style. I can do a business pitch, but this is what I fall back into almost all of the times because of the style. So, and again, this is also how you place yourself in the, in the minds of your investor, who also could be your customer. In one way, he's your customer, he or she's your customer. So that positioning or placement is also has to come through that. So if your solution is purely enterprise, it has to be a business pitch type presentation. Like your what.
So to follow up on what Sridevi just asked, tank episodes, Seshadri, so where they come in with a whole bunch of, gimmicks. What is your opinion about that? Do we need an attention grabber when you walk in, or to stick to a presentation?
Right. It's unfortunate that Shark Tank is, or a television program is somebody's first introduction into a pitch. So I will highlight the danger of this in a different way. There was and I got introduced to Donald Trump, the person, through that, and then later on I read his book and all of that. And most Americans became introduced to Trump coming into their living room that way. So they have identified him as the greatest or the most successful business person just because he did a television show about it, right? In fact, he's actually, if you read through his book, he has filed for bankruptcies, etc. He has failed in multiple businesses, and a lot of facts have come out that his tax returns for a certain number of years had shown losses, etc. Similar kind of dangers. Theirs is actually a sort of, if I am not wrong, it's a 1.5 presentation cut into a 15-minute segment that appeals to your TRP rather than the actual. So it's a show. And the show element of that is coming through. So that is something you have to keep in mind. And I have nothing against gimmicky presentations. If you can pull it off, nothing like it. But keep in mind that you're talking to a very sophisticated investors, and you are not the only smart person in the room. But a lot of, about 10 out of 100 tech presentations make this mistake of thinking that they are the only smart person in the room, where they'll say that I have this great solution, and then in the course of presentation, they will find out that the expert is sitting on the other side. Right? Or their customer is sitting on the other side. So never make that mistake. Again, going back to overconfidence, etc. Never come across that way. Think that you can come across as the smart person, but not the only smart person. That's the point I want to make. And
I guess,
a lot of these gimmicky presentations make that mistake. So that's something you definitely need to avoid. So just going back to one case that I've seen, this guy was off, and it was a team, and one of the guys in the course of presentation said, I want to offer this. Somebody asked, why are you not presenting it in Silicon Valley? Why are you presenting it in Bangalore? And this person comes across and says, look, I want to offer this opportunity to you first. So, that after that, he never got any Q&A, and essentially nobody even talked to him after that team, after, that presentation during the break. They were standing alone in the corner. So, so these are the dangers of using Shark Tank site. And I'm a big fan of the show. I mean, I watched almost all seasons, all of that, but still, a lot of it is the show value rather than the pitch value that you're seeing.
Even the investors are ready for it. They also know there's a part of the drama there.
Yeah, and you can see a lot of that because some of them come across with sob stories. Some of them, go back and talk about very unrelated family type of stories as well. So those are clearly, show business, right? So,
thank you.
Any further questions from participants? Seshadri, do you want to continue with the do you have more slides?
So I was about to suggest that. Thank you, Nirmal. I'll continue with that. We can still have a Q&A at the end. So we talked about the competitive analysis. That's where we stopped. Now, this is a place, this is ideally where you should be now talking about your management team. So when I say management team, it can be your management team and their roles. So a lot of startups, especially early stage, don't have clearly defined roles or titles, etc. But there'll be one person or the other doing one or the other roles. So you should talk about what their roles are and what makes them qualified to perform those roles in this particular slide. And here you can also talk about some of the positions that you want to be filled. So it could be that you're looking for a CTO because you want the technology to be upgraded. So that can be stated as something to be filled, and that will flow into your point about why your costs are going to go up or why you're raising funds to meet that particular cost. Then talk about your board of directors, advisors, and major investors. And here the point about mentioning any of them is to highlight their relevant qualifications or experience. So it can be for the founding team, any prior startup or entrepreneurial experience, and any technology or expertise they might have, and any similar or similar sales or marketing experience. So let's say you have a startup in the media space or in the music space, and you've done something in the media space, marketing, either an OTT platform or something or similar solution, or even old-fashioned music labels. That's where you bring that over and highlight it here. All of these, you don't need to bring everyone here. You can have a separate, appendix about your entire team, their CV, and all of that. But here, the key point is to highlight that you have the right team, or what your right team looks like with some of the vacancies filled in the future. And it can be as simple as just having their photos, names and qualifications, or their expertise. And it can be as complex as having additional slides on their long CV, etc. Depending on the kind of pitch that you're making. So if you're making the pitch where you're saying that your management team is the expert, or is your part of the package or the highlight of your pitch, then this is the slide that you need to talk more about and that you need to highlight. Otherwise, it's just an ordinary slide you run through. So depending on which sector or which segment you're in, the focus will change. And coming to the sort of more interesting slide for an investor, it would be the financial projections, key metrics. So this is where you bring together all your previous slides, the effect of it, and show that through at least a 3-year forecast. And some of the key metrics, say how you grow your number of customers, or how many products you will sell every year, or how many licenses you will have active, and some of the marketing conversion matrices. So the one where we're talking about volume, cost, and conversion, this is where you will talk about the conversion of those go-to-market plan, the strategy that you're taking. And here you'll rely on a bottom-up forecast where you'll start with your cost structure, your how many products you will sell, or how many licenses you will sell that get renewed, etc., rather than coming at it from a top-down market approach. And the other thing you clearly will need to talk about is usually when you go for a fundraise, you should have a plan on how you will operate for the next 18 months. So you should have that highlighted here of what it will look like without a fundraise, and what a fundraise will do for you in terms of numbers. So let's say nobody funds you after this pitch, what will keep happening for the next month, next 2 months, next 3 months in your business. That also should be highlighted. The reason for bringing that here is otherwise you will come across as desperate for a fundraise. If you say that without this fundraise, I will not survive in the market for the next 18 months or so. That comes across as a desperate pitch, and therefore that affects how your customer, the investor will value your startup. And finally, any optionality that might be there. So this could be that you are in the matrimony space, and the big player matrimony, Bharat Matrimony, or Shadi, or one of those players is interested in, or has shown interest in acquiring you, or has approached you before. So all of that matter here. That will give an idea to the investor on how long they might have to wait to get their money back. So this is very crucial if you are in the tech space these days, because of what Byju's is doing in the market, because the market is consolidating. So that is just another example of the sector where this is playing out. So you may have a case in point where you are attractive to Byju's or similar kind of large player who's looking to acquire a tech player in your space. And the final slide sort of that you're going to present is current status, accomplishments till date, timeline, and use of funds. So it could be any number of these things that you want to highlight, but essentially this will talk about where you stand today, and how many rounds of funds you have raised so far, and what will the near-term future look like. So here you will talk about any features that you're rolling out in the next month, in the next 3 months, or in the next 6 months. And finally, on how you will use the money that you're raising and how that will produce non-linear results. So this is the key to your entire presentation. A startup investor is not looking for your scale, only your scalability. They are also looking for how that money that they bring in will produce non-linear results. So let's say somebody pumps in, let's say you're looking for a 1 crore raise, and you're raising that funds at a 10 crore valuation. So bringing that 1 crore, how does that translate into, let's say, valuing the company at the next stage at after you achieve the milestone at, let's say, 50 crore or 100 crore. So that's the non-linearity that an investor is looking for. That should that this is a good place to bring that out. And this is where you stop the presentation. But uh, uh, let me also talk about some of the things why that investor is sitting in that presentation. Right? So somebody sitting in listening to your idea for 30 minutes, and they're doing it for, let's say, the entire day, listening to say 10 or 20 different ideas. So there are 3 or 4 broad motives that you can apply to. So one is clearly that they're looking to make money from investing in you, but that is true in almost all the cases with an investor. And one thing you have to keep in mind here is, are you really looking for only somebody who brings in money? And especially at an early stage, that is not something that you should be looking for. You should be looking for something more than that. So when you're looking at an angel investor, you should be targeting at somebody who can add value either in product side, on the market side, or in enhancing your team. So these are the 3 critical areas that an investor also should be able to, angel investor should be able to contribute to. So their interest also would be more along those lines as well. So other than the money part, if you talk about it, it could be a fear of missing out, which is called as FOMO. So fear of missing out is, let's say you have a very good, again coming back to an edtech type startup, very good startup in that space, and which could be a potential for acquisition by, like I said, by Byju's. So does the investor want to miss that opportunity of, say, missing out on the next, say, Akash education, to give an example here? So that is one thing you can appeal to, but be very careful about this. It's very hard to appeal to this FOMO sitting, especially in India. It's very tough to do because, the common way of doing it is saying that I am X of Y. So you would be saying that I am the Uber of India. So that could be the pitch that Ola would be making when they raise the initial funds. So it could be something in that format, or it could be something along the lines of, you have this great technology, etc. But that is hard to pull off. So the next reason an investor would be sitting or would have an appeal to would be the cost. So this is where the highlighting your problem comes into the picture, right? So here is where you try to appeal to the investor by appealing to, say, one of the problems they may have faced. So they will be able to relate to your solution much better. And this happens a lot in my case with, let's say, somebody offering a financial type solution or a financial service type solution, because of my background, just to give you an example. Or it could be that, like the earlier case I was talking about, somebody has an old parent and they're abroad. So that appeals to a certain type of an investor. And the sort of fourth case would be that there is a certain technology or industry that this investor is attracted in. So either working with, let's say, the fanciest new technology, probably blockchain, or probably those solutions. Or it could be that they are interested in working in the industry. So they may be interested in, let's say, solving the challenge of educating children better, for instance. Or, solving the challenge of processing solid waste better. So, or they don't like plastic waste, so probably the startup is trying to solve that. So that's another reason why they are looking at this particular industry. So these are all some of the things that you can appeal to, but make sure that you take only one of these tracks other than the money part. If you're doing it, either take the FOMO track or the cost track or the process track. And usually it's very easy to hit a good vibe in the investor space with the process part, because you'll be mostly pitching to somebody who has picked you based on your sector or the sort of outline that you're given about your startup, or the elevator pitch that you're given about your startup. So most likely it will be somebody who's sitting there would be somebody who likes this particular technology or sector. So that is much easier to address. But if you don't have that, look for the cause or the problem statement part of it. And money, of course, is important, but that has to be there. But that is not always the only reason that investor is attracted in your startup. So with that, let me wind up this segment of the presentation, and let's open for more questions.
Any questions, participants? Please use a raise hand option, or you can also type your question in the chat box. Okay, I'm guessing no questions on that part of the pitch deck. Okay, there's one question: difference between use of funds in slide 10 and forecasting in slide 9.
Yeah. So in the forecasting part, where you're going to so one of the key mistakes that I've seen is people will throw the entire spreadsheet as a table here in the slide, and that is really not necessary. You just talk about, let's say, you becoming break even in year 3, or just show the graph turning in year 3 when you become profitable, as an example, or you becoming, your profits across 3 years, or 5 years, or whenever your forecasting for your forecast period. Or it could be other matrices like the number of products sold, your turnover, etc. So all of this, instead of numbers, always do graphs or infographics, even better. And use of funds, that is a little bit more detailed, in the sense that, let's say you raise 1 crore, there you'll show probably in a table, small table, where you'll say, out of 1 crore, 50 lakhs will go into technology upgradation, 40 would be for additional costs because of hiring, etc. And 10 would be to probably additional marketing costs or something similar to that. Or it could be that you just have one single use, and you present that in the use of funds. So that is the distinction between those two. So one is about what the forecast is essentially about, what raising the funds does to your financial metrics, and the use of funds is essentially about how you plan to use the funds to get to those metrics. I think there is additional question on this, in the current status, etc. You want to describe the slide on current status, right? So here in that final slide, you'll talk about where your product solution or the startup stands in terms of any development that you've done so far. So this is where you'll talk about out of 10 features that I want to roll out in the product, I have the first 2. So that would be the current status, right? Accomplishments till date would be something like I have 10 customers who are from this particular segment. So that could be accomplishments. One of the common mistakes I see here is people will start talking about ISO certifications or similar credentials that they have. That is not necessary here. That is something that you don't need to talk about at all, unless it is a differentiator, a clear differentiator, where you're offering your solution better because you have this patent, for instance. That could be something that you highlight. And the point about non-linear results. So the non-linearity that I'm talking about is coming from so let's say, and this again comes from your business plan. So like I said, when you have that detailed business plan laid out, you'll see what this, say, you're raising this 1 crore at this round, for instance. So you'll see from your business plan what that 1 crore does to your business, right? So if you talk about it, the simple way of doing a linearity would be, or a simple way of scaling in a linear way would be that you have one shop where you're selling, let's say, 10 lakh worth of product in a year. So you raise funds, you deploy that to have 5 different shops, 5 more shops. Now you have 6 shops, you will have 60 lakh. So that's a pure linearity, right? But what a startup is expected to do is produce non-linear results. So it doesn't fit into this formula. It has to be something more than that. So let's say you open 5 shops and you invest this 1 crore to procure or set up those 5 shops or 5 outlets, and your turnover goes to 60 lakhs for the first year. It doesn't excite a startup investor. It may be profitable, it may provide return in the long run, etc. But it doesn't excite a startup investor. What they're looking for is, when they invest this 1 crore, they're automatically looking for is that, number one, you deploy this in ways where you get maximum return or maximum ROE in your business. Second, once you hit that the milestone, so once you completely deploy that 1 crore that you have raised in this round, what happens to the business? Does the business grow from, let's say, your 10 crore valuation today to 100 crore valuation? So typical rule of thumb for a startup investor is that once their fund is deployed, the business is valued at 10x. So just to give you an example, investing in a, I'm part of Mumbai Angels. Last year, there was a round of fundraise where a media startup raised fund, this is more like a news media startup, and they raised about 1 crore in that round, a little less than that. And when they raised funds, they were doing about 1 crore in turnover in that 12-month period. Now, 12 months later, when they report, they're doing 1 crore every month. So they have grown 12x just because of that close to 1 crore investment. So that is the kind of non-linearity that a startup investor is looking for. So if you're just targeting a linear type of investment, a startup which is not something right, that is right for you. And forget about all the laws and registration conditions. You should never call yourself as a startup or get registered as a startup. I know it's a catch word and all that, and you might think it's easy to raise funds because you call something a startup, and that's a common mistake I have seen. A lot of investors or a lot of even founders make. First thing they'll call, they'll say something along the lines of, "I have a tourism startup." And when I start talking to them, it will be usually that they have a a resort or a farmhouse that's there, and they are just getting it ready to raise funds from somebody, and that's not really a startup, because that's a very traditional solution that is already existing in the market. You are just one of the other new competition that is coming into the market. So about how you do this non-linearity part, and the non-linearity is what distinguishes a good startup from the ordinary business. And since that's also not the topic of today's presentation, I usually start my startup presentations by highlighting the distinction like this about the linearity and non-linearity of startups versus business versus some how that is also different from a non-investable entrepreneurship or a professional service that you offer. But I'm just bringing that up because of this topic of non-linear.
Thanks, Seshadri. Any more questions, anyone? Sure, I guess no more questions from the participants. Thank you very much, Seshadri, to conclude and provide a vote of thanks. I request Vinodini, who is our co-chair of TiE Women Project. Ma'am, can you go ahead and do the vote of thanks?
Good evening. So I think it has been a very enlightening session. I myself learned a lot of things from Mr. Seshadri. I'm sure all of us have very good takeaways from the session, and we are going to have one more masterclass following this. So actually, everybody must make time and attend these sessions, because it's going to prepare you further before you go for the final pitch. I want to thank Mr. Seshadri Krishnan for having taken out his time and giving us such a nice presentation. So simple, with so much clarity, clarifying all our doubts. In fact, his presentation itself is an example about how we should pitch. It's in its sheer clarity and simplicity. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out this evening to train all of us. I'm sure all the applicants here have really benefited from this, and perhaps they could reach out to you in case they have any further doubts. Maybe, yes, I'm sure they would, once they go back and look at everything, there would be some more things that they would like to clarify. So perhaps Nirmal, I think Nirmal would be taking those doubts across to you. So that would be very useful for all, right?
Yes.
That will be very good.
And I also wanted to, offer that at the end. One, Nirmal, you can share my mobile number if somebody is interested, and best way of reaching to me would be first send a WhatsApp message, and then
right.
Or Telegram
Sure.
Signal, but I prefer WhatsApp. That's what I usually often check more rather than. And only thing is, I'm saying WhatsApp because if you call, I may not be in a. If I'm in a meeting like this, I will not pick up the phone. It will be in silent. Yes. I might miss. So all of that, just send a WhatsApp message, and then we can have the conversation. Nirmal can share the number, or I can put it in the chat.
I'll share the number. I can also share the recording of this video with your permission, please.
Yeah, sure. And
that will be great.
And I can also share the slides, and that will have my contact information as well.
Sure.
And thank you for having me here. This was a pleasure, and And the reason I like doing this particular presentation, and we have a much larger one again planned for Startup Mission later on when we meet physically also, is that it also saves a lot of time when I'm sitting on the other side. Right, it filters out all the common mistakes that I have seen in all these presentations that I see time and again. So it is always a pleasure to talk about how to pitch, and thank you for having me here at TiE. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Nirmal, and thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and thanks, Nirmal, for putting this together.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing everyone again soon.
Sure.
Thank
you,
you, sir.
everyone. Good evening to you all. Thank you,
Good
Seshadri.
evening. Good evening.